This is a debris hut. Normal first timer watching the YouTube video, go out, strike it on your own with a rake and a tarp, probably take you about 8 hours to build the first debris hut. And then you get all discouraged because you're cold in it anyway because you didn't build it to specs, and you decide it's a useless myth. It doesn't work. Alright, I think somewhere along the lines we decided a lean-to was better. Anyone ever sleep in a lean-to with fire on a cold night? How'd you sleep?
Cold.
Sucks, doesn't it? Alright, this is a fire independent shelter. It relies on your core temperature to keep you warm. So the interior is about the size of a mummy bag, and the tolerances are pretty tight. 2 fingers to a hand width from your hip to the ridgepole when you're on your side, and the same for your shoulders. Alright, hand's length all the way around you. Outlines where you're going to put the ribs, which are the sticks that support this thing. I'm going to show you a cross section in a minute here. Now, this is not just a pile of leaves. Yes, it's modeled after squirrels' nests. I mean, how the heck do those little squirrels winter this far north in the tops of trees and come out smiling at the end of it? There's something going on with their shelter. Alright? Their tolerances are the same as ours inside this shelter. They also have a door that is lower than their sleeping chamber, just like an igloo or a beaver lodge. There's a theme here. Right? So we have a raised bed that drops down into an igloo door. This is just the door plug pulled over the top of it. The gentleman here is a doctor who's a resident over at the Kennebec Valley Hospital there. Intelligent man, but he made some mistakes, and the mistakes are normal. You're not going to sleep more comfortable in your bed at home in a debris hut until your 5th one or 8th one, if you have someone actively mentoring you through all of the plateaus. And that's because this is not a pile of leaves. This is an airflow management system that relies on your body heat radiating out not only heat but moisture. 20% or less of that escaping through the wall so slowly that by the time it reaches the outside air, it's ambient temperature. And the rest of it, that other 80%, moving so slowly down and out, because when that leaves, it creates suction, right? Nature hates a vacuum. That cold, dense air comes in but has to work to get up into your sleeping bed. So we're slowing airflow. We're taking into account radiant body heat forcing air out of our debris hut. If you do this right, negative 20 degrees in a pair of shorts with no fire, no knife, no rope, going in wet with wet materials, coming out dry the next morning, just like Gore-Tex. If you do this right, again, it takes at least 5 of them to dial it in, even after extensive instruction. I know, that's why I created the apprenticeship, because it got discouraging to teach it people who later became instructors who never had a successful night in a debris hut until 5, 6, 12 years later, and then they come out screaming like, woohoo, right? Because up until then it was just a myth and probably a lie, knowing Mike. But the standard is more comfortable than your bed at home. Folks, springy branches are your box spring. You can modify your mattress to be a Shea lounge. It's 2 feet of compressed leaf litter, shaped for your butt, your lumbar region. You can, just like your pack stays, for those of you with internal packs, you can create the perfect mattress. And then you build your shelter over it. Downside, like I said, multiple attempts before you dial it in. The other one, modern corn syrup fed Americana is not used to raking a yard for the initial 12 hours, the next time 8 hours, the next time 6 hours. By the time you're proficient, you got it down to 4 hours, 4.5. If the debris isn't as lush as it is here, about 4.5 hours. But you know, yeah, it's not so good here. It's probably going to take me 4.5, maybe even 5 hours, right? Because I live up where he lives. But they got both kinds of trees, spruce and fir, right? It's all just needle leaf. You can still build a debris hut. You use those twigs, those branches, those boughs as your bed. And that's a box spring and a mattress. You shingle them. You stick them into the ground in rows at 45-degree angles for the outline of your body plus 1 hand length. And then you shingle them in the other way, in the opposite direction. And then the third time around is a charm, and then you got your box spring mattress right there off the ground. Right? It's much more efficient that way. Remember, calories invested versus calories returned. First 4 days are the hardest. After that, life is cush if you burn your calories wisely and consistently. You don't go up there like John Rambo and start tearing the leaf litter off. That's how I lost my pinky pads on mason jars and stuff like that. And by the time you're 2.5 hours into it, you got a bunch of sticks as a skeleton and 1 blow to leave, and you're done. You're done for the day. Be like that 60-year-old gardener who goes out at 5 in the morning and goes until sundown. They come in, they make themselves dinner, and they wash their dishes and go to bed and restart all over again. Consistent tank-type low-gear energy is going to get you through to building shelters. These shelters, when your fingers are numb and you're freezing, you're shivering all over the place, right? Maybe you want to get access to that Wolverine energy to get your temperature up to speed. But as soon as you start to feel warm, shift it back into low, right? You want to be in low 4 for the rest of the day, so you can get through it and get things accomplished. The rabbit doesn't win this race. Does that make sense to you? All right, I want to show you a cross-section and give you some of the finer points. If you have journals, if you need to do this with video or cameras, get your information gathering devices, and we'll meet by that far shelter that's up, because that's where the blown apart debris hut is, and I want to show you a cross-section if that's right. Look how much debris, and this is compressed debris, between your body and the ground. And the reason we put so much effort into our bed before building our shelter, I'm still digging down, by the way. Is that the bottom of the rib? Yep. So, what's that? 7, 14, 21 inches. Compressed new, about 2 feet deep. And that's when you're laying on it, sleeping on it overnight, it compresses to about 2 feet. You start it just above knee high to mid-thigh. Wow. Right? And every time you put your layers of debris on, you roll and you make it form-fitting. Then you add one side first, because that ridgepole may sink an inch or two. Then you roll back in, make any final adjustments. Right? You can't really see, but the ribs on this side are a little longer, so that you could lift your ridgepole after you get your debris on without them all collapsing in on you. All right? Only a little longer. You don't want X's. X's are going to funnel the moisture into your ridgepole and create drips. So just a little overhang. The problem with these overhangs, if you make them too big as well, is the debris will settle on this wall and you'll have a big shaft of light for your skylight. And all your body heat just goes to warm the universe, right? So you want to keep it pretty conservative. The cold sink isn't as well defined as it was when this was new, because we had a bunch of kids coming in here, crawling in and out. But the box spring mattresses, can you see that? All these little twigs, right? So he built a box spring mattress and put his leaves over this because I told him, you're on a rock wall. You can't see it because it's old, but this is an old rock wall. The conduction is going to suck your body heat unless you get off this rock. It's a good location other than that. And he said, well, how do I prevent that? Because I want to stick. Right, here's some of the rocks. Told him, make your box spring. And that'll make sure you don't make any contact with those rocks. Conduction is the primary way we freeze to death in New England. Rich clay soils are dense and wet, and these rocks are cold. Right? So you want to get off the ground. Primary, off the ground. Conduction, and then radiation and convection, which is your body heat just leaking out all over the place. You want to hold that tight, and then the convection is the wind coming in through because your door is too big. So the door is an igloo door. We get rid of this big archway here and create a place for our hot air to get trapped in, and it has to cool down to go low. Ideally, the top of this door, this surface right here, is below or even with our sleeping chamber. Ideally. I don't know about you, but I'm not some yoga magician who can bend my spine 90 degrees, right? So I need a transitionary space. My door comes out to about here somewhere, and people are surprised. My big old panda butt can get into an opening like this, right? But you're measuring, one measurement is 2 to hand width above the crossbar. Then when I sit and plant my verticals, I take my hands and do 1 hand width away from each hip, and just bury some marker sticks before taking my pounding stick, pounding holes, pre-pounding them, and then my fork sticks, which are precious items out here, and just wiggling them in tight. And now I can shore this up for stability, right? Crawl in, leave a little bit of transition space so you can get up at an angle, put your feet in, scooch down into your mummy bag. This is your $400 negative 30 degree sleeping bag and your $600 four-season tent. Maintained, it'll last you for 6 or 7 years. The cool part is it starts to compost and generate its own heat after a while. It's convenient.
When you say maintained, do you mean just adding fresh leaf litter? And
just like squirrels?
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Every day you look for, I go inside and I look at the bottom of my feet and start scanning, looking for light peeking through. Right? One night it might get unusually cold, usually this time of year. It gets down, oh my gosh, it was 22, right? I felt it in my feet. So I'll go grab a bunch of leaf litter, kick it down to make my feet warmer. Little modifications. It takes probably 45 minutes, at tops an hour and a half if you have to blow apart your whole side. But most of your materials are already there.
So you actually do occasionally peel one wall back to rebuild your bed, and
Yeah.
if necessary.
If necessary.
Yeah.
And it would be necessary if you're going to spend more than 2 months in here. I did 4.5 years and went through, I lived in a debris hut for 4.5 years of my 6-year college tour. Don't worry, I didn't get like masters and PhDs. I just got my 4-year degree. Hey, college was fun. Compared to the Marine Corps, there were things like women in college. You know, I spent time there. I was in no hurry. But the debris hut experiences that I had, after a year and a half or so, it just gets too manky and damp. You want to make a new one. But that's not too bad, because, 4.5 hour to 8 hour investment for a year and a half's worth of shelter. And it's one person building it. You don't have to buy anything from EBS or, Lowe's or whatever. It's a good deal.
Yeah.
You'll want to build a workshop on this if you're planning on staying in this for over winter, especially. Now's the time to build your debris hut, because this is when the materials are fresh off the presses, so to speak. Right? Get your debris hut, add your workroom. When first snows fall, it only improves the insulation value of your shelter. Right? And that workroom gives you a place of bare earth to practice your bow drill, flint knapping. You roll hot rocks into a little hole in the ground. You don't want to bring flames into your debris hut. Right? But hot rocks will keep you warm. Okay. You can make an enclosure for your workroom. It just looks like an extension of your debris hut, except for now the ridge pole for that is resting on top of your debris hut and large enough that you can have a straight spine on one knee. And that gives you your bow drill, everything. Right?
Awesome.
You can change like that. As a school, we teach primitive, but we're in the context of our modern world. How do we find best practices? How do we infuse? I mean, that's a long time, a lot of energy investment for someone to learn this. Once they do, they're independently owned and operated. They don't need to pay rent or a mortgage. They want to, because it's a roomier place. They're not caddis flies. They're supposed to be living in a pile of leaves all the time. Certainly a transitionary shelter, but so too is that thing you just put up there, that big bright orange Mylar sheet. That is a transitionary shelter. We're not meant to live in that tarp for long. It's to get us by. This is to get us by until we get into something more involved, right? So how do we hybridize the best of these both worlds? Jim's been working on a shelter. I don't know if you want to share it up there. And so I'll turn you over to him, and I'm going to go track down my awareness student. She's probably about 1.5 miles out right now.
Nice. Thanks, Mike.
Anytime.
Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you.
Okay.